The Indiana Fever were supposed to be entering a completely different era right now. This was supposed to be the season where Caitlin Clark took another leap, where arenas stayed packed, where opposing teams kept moving games into NBA buildings just to handle the demand, and where the Fever became the center of the basketball universe. Instead, people are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Why are ticket promotions suddenly everywhere? Why are seats available again? And why does it feel like Caitlin Clark is playing with the emergency brake on? That is where the pressure around Stephanie White starts getting very real. Because in professional sports, coaches are judged by wins first. But in this situation, it goes beyond wins and losses. Caitlin Clark is not just a franchise player, she is the economic engine of the league. Every possession matters, every offensive slowdown matters, every game where she looks restricted matters. Fans didn't fall in love with controlled basketball. They fell in love with chaos, the logo threes, the transition passes, the fast pace, the confidence, the feeling that at any moment something historic could happen. And right now, a lot of people believe that version of Caitlin Clark is being muted. That's why this conversation is exploding. Because if the Fever are struggling to maintain the same ticket momentum, while Clark looks less aggressive and less free offensively, then suddenly Stephanie White is coaching under a spotlight that gets hotter every single game. And the dangerous part for Indiana is this: once fans stop buying early, once they stop trusting the product, getting that momentum back becomes much harder than people realize. This is no longer just basketball pressure. This is business pressure. And in professional sports, business pressure gets coaches fired faster than anything else. The biggest issue surrounding Indiana right now is not talent. Nobody questions the talent. Caitlin Clark remains one of the most dangerous offensive players on earth. Aaliyah Boston is still one of the best young bigs in basketball. The roster has shooting, size, toughness, and depth. The issue is identity. What style are the Fever actually trying to play? Because when fans watch Indiana, they don't want to see a slow half-court offense every possession. They want pace, they want transition basketball, they want unpredictability. They want defenses panicking 35 feet from the basket. That is the Caitlin Clark effect. And when that disappears, the energy changes immediately.
Not only do you have to start getting it done, you need Caitlin Clark to be out there in spectacular fashion, in the fashion that her fans are accustomed to seeing her in, because you are losing the people, which means the owners are losing the money. It is as simple as that. Let's take a look at this here, man. As Stephanie White has already pretty much downed Caitlin Clark's stock to begin with at this point. Take a look at this here.
The scary part for Indiana is that sports history is filled with situations where organizations tried to overcontrol generational players. It happened with young quarterbacks in the NFL. It happened with explosive scorers in the NBA. Coaches sometimes get so focused on limiting mistakes that they accidentally remove greatness. Steph Curry changed basketball because Golden State eventually stopped restricting him. Imagine if Steve Kerr told Curry to stop shooting deep threes because they were bad shots. The entire dynasty might never happen. That is why fans are reacting so emotionally to this situation. They are terrified that Indiana is trying to make Caitlin Clark safe instead of unstoppable, and the business side is becoming impossible to ignore. When Clark entered the league, tickets disappeared instantly. Entire arenas sold out months in advance. Opposing franchises saw attendance spikes they had never seen before. Television ratings exploded, merchandise exploded. Now suddenly there are promotions everywhere. Discounts, special giveaways, food deals, seat campaigns. That may seem normal for many teams, but it does not feel normal for the Caitlin Clark era. And perception matters. If fans begin believing they might spend hundreds of dollars traveling to games only to watch a limited version of Clark, hesitation starts creeping in. That hesitation becomes empty seats. Empty seats become media criticism. Media criticism becomes pressure on the organization. And pressure eventually lands on the head coach. The most dangerous thing about Caitlin Clark has never been just the shooting, it's the pace. The moment she grabs a rebound, the defense starts sprinting backward in panic. That changes everything. It creates easier shots for teammates. It creates confusion. It creates transition mismatches. Indiana looked most dangerous when Clark was playing freely and instinctively.
You get a food spotlight. They're giving out a full court porkster. A sandwich down here, a foot-long tenderloin sandwich in section 17. This is crazy. The Indiana Fever have not had to do this since Caitlin Clark's arrival, and all of a sudden, they're having to give away tenderloin sandwiches, t-shirts, flags, post-game pizzas in the plaza. This is nutty.
That's why so many fans are frustrated seeing the Fever operate slower at times. Because slowing the game down actually helps bigger, more physical teams. And against Washington, that becomes a major issue. The Mystics have size, they have length. They have young athletic players who can crowd the paint and force physical basketball. Sonia Citron is scoring over 21 points per game. Kiki Iriafen is dominating the glass. Shakira Austin brings even more size. If Indiana plays slow, they are walking directly into Washington's preferred style. That's why Clark pushing tempo becomes critical. And historically, the greatest offensive guards always controlled rhythm. Magic Johnson destroyed teams in transition. Steve Nash turned pace into an art form. Sabrina Ionescu thrives when the game speeds up. Even Diana Taurasi at her peak controlled defensive panic with tempo and spacing. Clark belongs in that category stylistically, but there's another layer here people are watching closely: confidence. When scorers start hesitating even slightly, defenses feel it immediately. A half-second delay changes everything. The most dangerous version of Caitlin Clark is the version that doesn't think, she reacts. Pull-up three, cross-court laser, transition bomb, behind-the-back pass. That's when defenses collapse psychologically. And fans believe that version has to return immediately.
Have an impact. So we got to get into the 5 keys, man. The number one thing, Stephanie White, get out of Caitlin Clark's way and allow her to do what she do. That's the long court passes. That's the behind the back passes. That's the pick and roll. That's the logo 3. Okay, we need to get this thing back on track, and we need all facets of Caitlin Clark unleashed and unlocked. And that is not going to happen unless head coach Stephanie White gets the hell out of the way.
Because if Clark starts dominating again offensively, every other problem gets smaller. The crowd energy changes, the pace changes, teammates get easier looks. Officials feel pressure from the environment. Opponents start panicking in transition. One superstar can completely alter the emotional temperature of an arena. And Indiana desperately needs that energy back. This is where the conversation becomes bigger than basketball strategy. Caitlin Clark is not just driving Indiana Fever revenue, she is driving league-wide economics. Entire television schedules changed because of her. Road attendance changed because of her. Corporate partnerships changed because of her. That creates an entirely different level of organizational pressure. Because if attendance momentum cools off, executives start asking questions very quickly. Why is the offense inconsistent? Why does the pace feel slower? Why are fans complaining online after wins? Why are ticket prices dropping? And perhaps most importantly, why does the team not fully resemble the player that transformed the league financially? That's why Stephanie White is suddenly coaching under enormous pressure. Not because she forgot basketball, because expectations around Caitlin Clark are historically abnormal.
On these guards versus the Washington Mystics. The number 3 thing is going to be the Indiana Fever must play in transition. Okay, this team is big. This team is physical. Okay, and you're going to have to get out and run. What we pulled last game, we only had 2 fast break points. That's not going to cut it. We got to push tempo, push the ball up the floor, make Lauren Betts run, make Kiki Iriafen run up and down, make Shakira Austin get up and down. You're going to have to outrun this team.
The Fever also have another major issue: roster construction versus elite size. Against teams with multiple physical frontcourt players, Indiana can struggle defensively and on the glass. Aaliyah Boston ends up carrying a massive burden physically. And if the Fever continue struggling against bigger lineups while also limiting transition opportunities offensively, criticism is only going to intensify. Because fans will ask the obvious question: if Indiana cannot dominate in the half-court, why aren't they fully unleashing the fastest offensive weapon in women's basketball? That question becomes harder to answer every single week, and the long-term implications are serious. If Clark thrives, Indiana becomes the center of the WNBA for years. If frustration grows, every decision around the franchise gets scrutinized harder: rotations, offensive schemes, injury management, minutes, coaching philosophy, everything. Superstars change the power structure of organizations. Michael Jordan did it. LeBron James did it. Caitlin Clark is reaching that level of influence in women's basketball, which means the pressure surrounding Stephanie White is only beginning. At the end of the day, this situation comes down to one thing. Does Indiana trust Caitlin Clark to fully be Caitlin Clark? Because fans are making their opinion very clear. They don't want a controlled version. They don't want a cautious version. They want the player who changed the sport with fearless basketball and unlimited range. And if the Fever cannot recapture that energy soon, the conversations around Stephanie White are only going to get louder. So now the question becomes, should Indiana completely build around Caitlin Clark's fast-paced style, or does Stephanie White need to keep controlling the system even if fans hate it?